In my 53 years of living with ADHD, in addition to my past several years of ADHD training and coaching, I learned a thing or two about what success looks like and what the secret is to not just surviving as an ADHDer, but truly thriving in the context of knowing what works for you, knowing what doesn't work for you, making the right life decisions, and managing your energy. All of those things are possible. I'm not saying it's easy, but with the three stages of development that I am going to share with you today, you can make tremendous headway in improving your own symptoms naturally, cognitively, energetically. No meds required, just you, your brain, your intention, and a little help from yours truly. And on that note, if this is the first time you're here, welcome. My name is Karen McGill. I am a certified ADHD coach and creator, and I'm here for the busy, ambitious brains who want to get schnizzle done, but they haven't figured out how to work the brain yet. And today we're going to do just that. Let's get into it. So the way I see it, there are three fundamental stages of ADHD development that is not linear in the sense that you start at stage one and you go up to stage two, stage three, and then you're done. It's more circular, like a flywheel. If you can imagine a flywheel and you're in the middle, and every time you go through these stages of ADHD development, you uncover a new layer of yourself. And that's really the intention we're going after here, right? To know thyself, to support thyself, and to be thyself. So those are the three stages that we're going through, starting with the first one, which is actually self-awareness, AKA know thyself. From the perspective of psychology, we call self-awareness metacognition, and that is your ability to think about your thinking. Now, metacognition doesn't actually fully develop in humans until we hit our 20s. If you're a neurotypical person, you might fully develop metacognition in your early 20s. However, what we've learned is that folks with ADHD develop about 6 years slower than the average neurotypical person. So we may not get full access to our metacognition until we're like 26 or 27. And the other thing that scientists have recognized, when you look at scans of an ADHD brain versus a neurotypical brain, you can actually see where that underdevelopment is in the right anterior cortex of the brain. And here's the great news. Your brain is like a muscle. So with intention and practice, you can develop self-awareness just like a neurotypical person and organize your life in such a way that works for you. Let's unpack that. Now, when you think about self-awareness and you think about somebody you know who might be lacking self-awareness, you might think that their behaviors are maybe clumsy or boisterous, or maybe they say dumb things that offend people because they're just not aware. That is not what I'm talking about. That is either a state of emotional dysregulation or somebody who needs to refine their manners. What I'm talking about is self-awareness in the context of how we move through the world. And I can think of no better illustration than this one. Have you ever been in a room reading a book or looking at something as the daylight is starting to recede? So gradually, the level of light in the room that you're in is starting to get darker and darker. But because we are focused on whatever it is we're doing, we're not really paying attention to the transition of light until somebody comes into the room and says, "How can you read in the dark?" And they switch on the light and there's like, holy smoly, I can't believe I was trying to read in the dark. Now I can literally see what I'm looking at and it's so much easier to read. So in that context, our lack of self-awareness showed up in two ways. We were unaware of the change of light in the room, but we also lacked awareness of our eyes having to work harder and harder to read the letters on the page, which leads to eye strain and headache and feeling really tired. So what's happened there is that your body had to adjust and accommodate for the changes in the environment, and we do them subconsciously. That happens in every area of our life. It can show up like masking in situations where we have to present very differently than we feel. We don't necessarily know that we're masking, but we're doing it because of social conditioning, and we know we need to appear like we know what's going on or we're enjoying what's going on. Whereas meanwhile, in our subconscious and our body, we're actually shutting down because we don't want to be where we are presenting as how we are. Self-awareness can also show up in our habits, like when we forget to eat or drink water, and at the end of the day, we can't figure out why we're so exhausted. In those situations, that is a disconnect between what's happening above your neck and what's happening below your neck. Your body might be telling you, "I'm hungry, I need a glass of water, and I gotta go to the bathroom." Meanwhile, you're in a state of hyperfocus, so you're ignoring those cues. And here's a perfect example that I know you can relate to. So often, ADHDers lead to burnout because they're not listening to those biological cues over time. So we're not paying attention to the fact that we're overworking and overthinking and overstressing until we hit a wall and wonder what the heck happened. That is the disconnect between our brain and our body, and that can lead us to crash and burn over and over again. So you might be thinking, absolutely, I need to practice self-awareness, Karen. How do I do that? Well, that is the $64,000 question, and I could answer it in a million ways, and I will continue to over the course of time. But here's what has worked for me: mindfulness. Now, hang on. When I say mindfulness, I am not suggesting that you have to sit on a pillow and meditate for an ungodly amount of time. I'm not saying that. Mindfulness is the practice of showing up with your senses to experience the moment fully, whatever's going on. So if you're driving, mindfulness is how your hands feel on the steering wheel. It's what you're looking at as you drive ahead. It's what you're thinking about when you need to turn left and right. It's how you feel about the speed of the person coming up behind you. Those are all of your perceptions and your senses that are engrossed in the moment. The same thing can happen when you're washing the dishes and you smell the lemony dish soap and you hear the dishes clanging and you feel the suds on your fingers. When you bring all of your senses into the moment, you are practicing mindfulness. That is all it is. And the more you practice it, the more you build your self-awareness muscle, because your senses become more attuned to the environment around you. And from there, you have a lot more awareness, knowledge, and opportunity to decide what is for you and what is not for you. Which brings us to the second stage, which is lifestyle design. That is all of the tips and tricks and hacks that you've learned on TikTok about ADHD. Do they work? Some do, some don't. It all depends on your level of self-awareness, knowing what works for you and what doesn't. So let's come back to that analogy where you're sitting in a room trying to read and you're not aware that the room's getting darker and darker and your eyes are working harder and harder. Once you're aware that that's what's happening, you can design a solution specifically for that. Maybe it's putting a timer on a light switch where it turns on at a certain time of day so you never have to worry about straining your eyes again. Now, that is a very simplified solution, but imagine if you could apply that simple solution to every area of your life where you are straining and working harder and harder without a level of awareness of what's really going on. It would make your life so much easier. Trust me on this one, I know from experience. In terms of lifestyle design, we can look at external solutions like the light switch, or we can look at deeper and more internal solutions. Like, for example, when we come back to this idea of masking in situations where we're not reflecting who we are authentically in the moment, we're just putting on a facade and hoping we get away with it. Let's say that happens to you every time you hang out with your friends at a bar. It's noisy, it's loud, there's lots of people, it's very overstimulating. So as a result, you try to numb that overstimulation by drinking too much or eating too much. And then overall, you end up spending too much money. When we become aware of those situations where we're putting ourselves in environments that just absolutely do not work for us, we have the choice to make a change. So maybe instead of hanging out with your friends at a bar, you have them over for dinner, or you go outside in nature for a hike, or something that aligns better with your nervous system and the way you feel comfortable showing up in the world. It starts with self-awareness, knowing what's for you and what's not for you, and then it moves into a choice as to how you want to do things differently going forward. So that is the whole idea of lifestyle design. And there's nothing wrong with tips, tricks, and hacks, but really, when you can take the time to invest in really understanding who you are and building your own self-awareness, then these tips and tricks become less about trial and error and more about making choices that are truly aligned to who you are and what you need. So on that note, the third stage of this ADHD evolution is energy management. And that's really where the rubber meets the road. This is where you become aware of something that's not working for you. You've come up with some sort of lifestyle change or design, and now you're implementing it. Maybe it's a new morning routine or the way you interact with friends, or maybe you've realized that the job that you're in is not aligned to your energy or what interests you, and you're now actively seeking a new job because you know what to look for. This is a real critical part of personal change. And you know what the key to success is with personal change? Micro changes, not macro changes. Let me break this down. Let's say that you have come full circle in understanding a big piece of your life that's not working for you, and you've decided to make a whole bunch of changes both internally and externally. And now you're in this point of energy management where you're implementing all of these changes. However, what we know about ADHDers is that we're not really good at self-awareness. That means that very often we put too many things on our plate at one time. And when we can't sustain it, we get annoyed with ourselves and give up. And then we tell ourselves a story that we can't finish anything. So we have to use that sense of self-awareness when we're actually in energy management mode to make sure that we're not applying too many changes at once. Because it doesn't matter if you have ADHD or not. If you try to make too many changes in your life at once, it's not going to go very well and you're not going to feel very happy with yourself. So micro changes as you go through this energy management piece is so important. The other reason why you want to make micro changes one at a time is that you want to test whether or not that change is actually helping you or hindering you. Here's the thing about humans and how we live. We're either doing things that give us energy or we're doing things that drain our energy. Rarely are we doing things that are energy neutral. So at this point, when you've made some subtle changes in your lifestyle, you want to be aware of tracking that energy management to see, is this really helping me or is it draining my energy? And if it is draining my energy, then I have to go back to the lifestyle design drawing board and try something different. So for the love of God, please don't make too many changes when you're first starting to manage your energy in an intentional way. And keep in mind, when I talk about energy, I'm not just talking about whether or not you've got the energy to do cardio one day or the next. Energy is not just physical, it's also mental and emotional. And that touches every area of your life, from the people you hang out with to the work that you do and just the things you expose yourself to in general. So I really want you to take this holistic view of energy and how yours is working for you or against you. And here's the beautiful thing about this entire framework. Once you become more self-aware and you've started to design your lifestyle according to what you've learned about yourself, and now you're testing it out and managing your energy, it's going to make you a more aware person in general. It's going to start to peel away layers of you that aren't really you, and you're going to start showing up more and more like yourself. So I'm really excited about this framework because it's going to inform everything that I do for you guys going forward here on this channel. However, I also want this to be useful for you starting today if this is something that you want to do. And to help you think through this process, I've included a super simple worksheet below. You can download it and it's going to give you a few prompts to think about in terms of building your own self-awareness and designing around that. Because here's the other thing about self-awareness. We don't know what we don't know. So if we're not aware of something, it's hard to build self-awareness around it. Hopefully these prompts will help you get your brain thinking in new ways that you haven't really considered before in terms of improving the quality and authenticity of your life. So that's what I've got for you today. I hope you find it useful and helpful. The worksheet is linked below, so go snag that for yourself. And on that note, guys, I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.